We're looking at the earliest complete New Testament. This is called the Sinaiticus, and this is probably the most important codex anywhere in the world for the New Testament. It's all 27 books of the New Testament. There are two extra books that are added at the end, the Shepherd of Hermes and the Epistle of Barnabas, which are considered to be authoritative but not canonical. They're added at the end for that reason. But this has all 27 books, and it was discovered by Tischendorf when he was traveling through Sinai Peninsula. He came to St. Catherine's Monastery and went inside. Now, he could read Greek, and he knew about manuscripts, and he found this particular codex in a waste paper basket. They were going to burn it to keep warm. And when he looked at it, he noticed it was written in majuscule, which is the capitalized script in Greek with no word location. The words are not separated, nor are there any verses. It's all run together, so it's very difficult to read. So in the 4th century, they moved to minuscule, which is much more readable. And so he knew that, and he saw this was written in majuscule. He said, my goodness, this must be one of the earliest codices in existence. So he asked if he could borrow it. They were going to burn it anyways, so they gave it to him. He sent it back here to England. They sent it up to St. Petersburg in Russia, and they dated it to 350, between 325 and 350. Now, since then, there has been lots of research, a lot of accelerating mass spectrography on it to date it very precisely. And it's dated to the beginning to the mid 4th century, between 325 and 350. What's interesting is this was one of the first ever codices to be made. And the reason why is that when the New Testament was written, the earliest New Testaments were written on papyrus, which are interlocking leaves. And they would flatten them out and dry them, and they would disintegrate very quickly. In fact, within 100 years, they would just crinkled to dust. And so copies need to be made almost immediately. So you have schools of copies over and over again, copying one to the other, and they would then be rolled up in a scroll. They were not very good, very practical for that reason, and so that's why it was in the 4th century that finally the emperor at that time, Constantine, who became a Christian, commissioned 50 codices to be made for the Council of Nicaea in 325. Now, this could be one of those. But in order to have a codice, you have to have parchment or vellum, which means animal skins. And animal skins are a lot more expensive. To make this particular codice right here took 52 gazelles. 52 gazelle skins that had to be cured and processed in order to make them flat enough so they could be used on a codex that you see here. So you'd have to be pretty wealthy in order to create something of this size and this expense. And that's why before the 4th century, you don't have any codices. Now, from the 4th century on, then there was a proliferation of codices. These are two of the most important right here. This is the Sinaiticus, that's the Alexandrinus. The Alexandrinus is the New and the Old Testament in Greek. Now, there is also a Sinaiticus of the Old Testament. It's usually in the other glass cabinet. They don't have it there at the moment. It is not complete, but it's written in Greek. So the Old Testament was written in Greek long before it was written in Hebrew, at least as far as those texts that have been retained, extant texts. The earliest extant text we have in Hebrew is the Masoretic text, which is dated to 914. The Sinaiticus is 4th century. That's a good 500 years earlier. Now, if you notice, they have it open. What do they have it open to? The end of Mark. They purposely have it. Is it Mark 16, right? They keep changing. I don't know what this one is. It says right down here. Can you read it?
8.
Oh.
Let anyone of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her.
It's John
Yeah,
8.
John 8, sorry.
John 8.
They have it open to John chapter 7, verse 53, and John 8:11 is missing. They've opened that purposely. Isn't that interesting? They keep it open at those places where verses are missing. The last part of Mark 16, verse 9 to 20, will not be in this manuscript. John chapter 7, verse 53 to John 8:11 is not in this manuscript. That's woman caught in adultery. 1 John chapter 5, verse 7 will not be in this manuscript as well. There are 40 verses that are not in this manuscript that are in our current Bible. Now, if you look at any of you, except for King James Version, if any of you have any other version, they put a line before and after those verses, warning the reader that they're not found in the earliest manuscripts. That's talking about this manuscript, the Alexandrinus, the Vaticanus, which would be the other metropolitan codice that's in Vatican in Rome. Those are the 3 metropolitan codices, the 3 earliest codices. They would not have those 40 verses. The reason is that King James included them in there. And that's why the King James has these verses. They became the standard. Everybody copied them. We'll talk more about that outside. I'm going to step on some toes here, so I don't want to say too much more here without getting thrown out. I've already been thrown out of this place once before. But anyways, let's just... This is 4th century. That's 5th century. So that's 5th century. That's 400. This is 4th century. That's 300. Between 325 and 350. Okay?
Where they found this one?
Alexandria. That's what's called Alexandria.
That makes sense.
Sinaiticus found in Sinai. All right? They named the place where it's from. Usually that they're
These 40 verses, King James, like how did he know about them?
we'll talk about that outside.
I think
Yeah,
he's
King
got
James
something
has
to
a
say
lot of
about
problems.
King Jimmy.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna say
There's a
something
lot
about
of problems with the King James, but we'll talk about that outside.
Yep.
Okay?
King- Doesn't translate well internationally either.